My father looked me dead in the eye and said she had no right to be here. My uncle backed him up, crossing his arms like a bouncer at the church door. When my 8-year-old son walked up to that microphone holding an envelope, the entire funeral fell silent. You know that feeling when your heart drops into your stomach and time seems to freeze? That's exactly what happened the morning of my grandfather's funeral when I saw my Aunt Rebecca walking across the church parking lot for the first time in 12 years. Let me back up for a second because this story doesn't make sense without understanding my family. My name is Sarah, and I'm 34 years old with an 8-year-old son named Tyler, who has the biggest heart and the most innocent eyes you've ever seen. Tyler is one of those kids who notices everything but doesn't understand why adults make things so complicated. He's the type of child who asks why the sky is blue and actually listens to your entire explanation, then asks 3 more questions that make you realize how little you actually know about anything. My father, Robert, is 58 and built like the construction worker he used to be before he started his own contracting business. He's the kind of man who shakes hands firmly, pays his bills on time, and expects everyone else to do the same. When he gives you his word, you can count on it. But when you break his trust, you're dead to him. That's just how he operates. He's not cruel, just completely unforgiving when it comes to family loyalty. My Uncle Mike is my dad's younger brother by 6 years, but he might as well be Dad's shadow. Wherever Robert goes, Mike follows. Whatever Robert thinks, Mike agrees with. If my father decided the sky was green tomorrow, Uncle Mike would be the first person to back him up and ask if anyone else had a problem with that. He's 52, works for my dad's company, and has spent his entire adult life making sure nobody crosses the family. Then there's my Aunt Rebecca. She's 45 now, though I barely recognized her when I saw her that morning. Rebecca is my grandfather's daughter, my father's sister, and she used to be my favorite person in the entire world. When I was Tyler's age, she was the aunt who snuck me extra cookies, took me to movies my parents said I was too young for, and taught me how to paint my nails in colors that would horrify my mother. She had this laugh that was so contagious it could make you forget whatever was bothering you. But Rebecca made what my family considers the ultimate sin 12 years ago. She questioned my grandfather's decisions about his will and accused him of playing favorites among his children. She claimed he was planning to cut her out unfairly and leave everything to my father and Uncle Mike. The argument got ugly, really ugly, with accusations flying about money and fairness and who had sacrificed more for the family business. Rebecca stormed out of a Sunday dinner, and my father declared that if she wanted to act like she wasn't part of this family, then she wasn't welcome anymore. My grandfather, Frank, was 79 when he passed last week, and he was the glue that held our entire family together. He was the type of man who remembered everyone's birthday, never missed a school play or baseball game, and had a story for every situation. Grandpa Frank built a successful construction business from nothing, raised 4 kids after my grandmother died young, and somehow managed to keep everyone in line for decades. He was tough when he needed to be, but had the gentlest heart, especially when it came to his grandchildren. For 12 years, our family gatherings have had this empty space where Rebecca used to sit. Holidays felt different. Birthday parties were quieter. Tyler has heard stories about his Aunt Rebecca, but he's never met her because my father made it clear that choosing Rebecca meant choosing against the family. It's been 12 years of silence, 12 years of stubbornness, and 12 years of pretending that losing Rebecca didn't hurt all of us. So when I saw her walking across that church parking lot, wearing a simple black dress and looking smaller and more fragile than I remembered, my heart started racing. I knew exactly what was about to happen, and I knew my father and Uncle Mike would be ready for her. What I didn't know was that my 8-year-old son was about to teach our entire family a lesson about forgiveness that none of us saw coming. The morning air was crisp, and I could smell the flowers from the arrangements being carried into St. Mary's Church. It should have been a peaceful moment, but my heart was pounding as I stood in the parking lot 30 minutes before my grandfather's funeral, watching my father and Uncle Mike position themselves like security guards at the church entrance. Tyler was tugging on my black dress, asking why we weren't going inside yet when I saw her. Rebecca was walking across the parking lot, moving slowly but with determination. She looked so different from the vibrant woman I remembered from my childhood. Her once bright auburn hair was now streaked with gray and pulled back in a simple bun. She'd lost weight and there were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 12 years ago. But she still had that same gentle way of walking, the same way she used to approach my bedroom when I was scared during thunderstorms. "Mommy, who's that lady?" Tyler whispered, and I realized he was seeing his aunt for the first time in his life. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that his family has been broken for longer than he's been alive? My hands started shaking as I watched Rebecca get closer to the church steps. I could feel the grief I'd been carrying all week mixing with this new anxiety about what was about to happen. Losing Grandpa Frank had been hard enough. He'd been sick for months, and watching him fade away in that hospital bed had broken something inside all of us. But seeing Rebecca here, knowing what my father was about to do, felt like I was about to lose another family member all over again. The memories came flooding back as I watched her approach. I remembered being 7 years old and Rebecca showing up at our house with a bag full of art supplies, announcing that we were going to paint masterpieces on the back porch. My mother had rolled her eyes, but Rebecca didn't care. She spent the entire afternoon teaching me how to mix colors and telling me stories about famous artists. When I painted a purple tree, instead of correcting me, she said it was the most beautiful tree she'd ever seen because it came from my imagination. I remembered her sneaking me into PG-13 movies when I was 11, buying me popcorn with extra butter, and whispering commentary that made me laugh so hard other people shushed us. I remembered her painting my nails electric blue for my 8th grade dance when my mother insisted on clear polish, and how she winked at me when my parents weren't looking. But I also remembered the last time I saw her. The horrible fight at Sunday dinner, when she accused Grandpa Frank of favoritism, claiming he was planning to leave her with almost nothing while my father and Uncle Mike got the business and the house. She'd thrown her napkin down and said, "I've sacrificed just as much for this family as anyone else, and I won't be treated like I don't matter." My father had stood up so fast, his chair fell over. "If you can't respect Dad's decisions, then maybe you don't belong at this table anymore." Rebecca had looked around the room, and I'll never forget the hurt in her eyes when she realized no one was going to defend her. Not even me. I was 22 and scared of my father's anger, so I just sat there like a coward while my aunt gathered her purse and walked out of our lives forever. Now, 12 years later, I was 34, with a son of my own, and I was still scared of my father's anger. But watching Rebecca approach the church where we were supposed to say goodbye to the man who raised all of us, I felt something different. I felt ashamed of the coward I'd been at 22, and I felt angry that my son might grow up thinking this kind of family cruelty was normal. Tyler squeezed my hand tighter as he sensed my tension. "Mommy, why do you look scared?" Before I could answer, my father's voice boomed across the parking lot. "Rebecca, stop right there." His tone was the same one he'd used when I was in trouble as a child, except now it was directed at his own sister on the day they were supposed to bury their father together. Rebecca stopped walking, and for a moment she looked like she might turn around and leave, but then she straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and kept walking toward the church steps where my father and uncle were waiting to turn her away from her own father's funeral. What happened next will be burned into my memory forever. My father stepped directly into Rebecca's path, and Uncle Mike flanked him like they were guarding Fort Knox instead of a church entrance. The determination I'd seen in Rebecca's face faltered for just a moment when she realized they weren't going to let her pass. "Hello, Robert," she said quietly, her voice barely carrying across the parking lot. "Hello, Mike." My father's jaw was set so tight I could see the muscle twitching from 50 feet away. "You've got some nerve showing up here, Rebecca. After all these years of silence, you think you can just waltz back in like nothing happened?" "He was my father too, Robert." Rebecca's voice broke on the word father, and I watched her hands tremble as she clutched her small black purse. "I just want to say goodbye." Uncle Mike stepped forward, and his voice had that same cold edge I remembered from the worst family arguments. "You said goodbye 12 years ago when you walked out on this family over money. You made it pretty clear what mattered more to you." I could see other family members and friends arriving, slowing their walk to the church as they realized they were witnessing a confrontation. Mrs. Patterson from next door stopped pretending to check her phone and was openly staring. Cousin Jim and his wife, Jennifer, had frozen halfway across the parking lot, unsure whether to keep walking or retreat to their car. Tyler tugged on my dress again, harder this time. "Mom, why is that lady crying? Why won't they let her come to Grandpa Frank's goodbye party?" His innocent questions hit me like a punch to the gut. How do you explain to a child that adults can be so cruel, that families can throw away decades of love over pride and stubbornness, that his grandfather's own children couldn't put aside their anger for one day to honor the man who raised them? Rebecca wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and when she spoke again, her voice was steadier but filled with years of hurt. "I tried to call him, Robert. During his last months, I tried so many times. Someone kept hanging up on me." My father's face turned red, and I knew immediately that he was the one who'd been screening Grandpa's calls. "He didn't want to talk to you. You lost that right when you accused him of playing favorites and stormed out like a spoiled child." "I was hurt and scared about being left out," Rebecca said, taking a small step forward. "But I never stopped loving him. I never stopped being his daughter, no matter what you decided for this family." Uncle Mike crossed his arms over his chest. "Actions have consequences, Rebecca. You can't just show up when it's convenient and expect everything to be forgiven." I watched my aunt's shoulders sag, and for a moment I thought she might actually turn around and leave. But then something shifted in her expression. She straightened up and looked my father directly in the eyes. "You know what, Robert? You're right. I did make mistakes. I let my pride get in the way 12 years ago, and I've regretted it every single day since then. But standing here, trying to keep me from my own father's funeral, this isn't about protecting Dad's memory or family honor. This is about your pride, and it's ugly." The parking lot had gone completely silent except for the sound of car doors closing as more people arrived and realized they were walking into a family war. I could see the funeral director, Mr. Henderson, hovering near the church entrance, clearly uncomfortable with the scene unfolding on his property. Tyler pulled on my hand with both of his small ones now. "Mommy, why won't Daddy's brother let the sad lady go inside? Isn't she supposed to be sad too when people go to heaven? Out of the mouths of babes." My 8-year-old son had just summarized the entire situation with more clarity and compassion than any of the adults involved. The weight of what I was witnessing hit me all at once. This wasn't just about old family drama anymore. This was about what kind of lesson Tyler was learning about forgiveness, about family, about how we treat people when they're already broken. I looked at my father, red-faced and immovable, then at Uncle Mike with his arms crossed like a bouncer, then at Rebecca standing alone with tears streaming down her face. I thought about all those childhood memories of her kindness, and I thought about my grandfather lying in that casket inside the church, probably rolling over in his silk-lined box at the sight of his children fighting instead of mourning together. That's when I realized I had a choice to make. I could stand there like a coward for the second time in my life, or I could finally do what was right. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears as I made the decision that would either heal my family or tear it apart forever. I squeezed Tyler's hand and took a deep breath that felt like it came from my toes. "Come on, Tyler," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We're going to walk over there." Tyler looked up at me with those big, curious eyes. "Are we going to help the sad lady, Mommy?" "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to help the sad lady." I could feel every step across that parking lot like I was walking through quicksand. My father's eyes locked onto mine, and I saw the exact moment he realized what I was about to do. His expression shifted from anger at Rebecca to complete shock at his own daughter's betrayal. When I reached Rebecca, she looked up at me with such surprise and gratitude that I almost started crying right there. Up close, I could see how much she'd aged, but I could also see the same gentle eyes that used to read me bedtime stories when my parents worked late. "Rebecca," I said quietly, "you can sit with Tyler and me inside." The parking lot went dead silent. Even Tyler stopped swinging our joined hands and seemed to sense the weight of the moment. Rebecca's eyes filled with fresh tears, but this time they looked different. Hopeful, maybe. "Sarah Elizabeth." My father's voice cracked like a whip across the silence. The use of my full name transported me back to being 12 years old and caught sneaking cookies before dinner. "Get back here right now! Do not do this!" I turned to face him, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't back down from his anger. "Dad, she's family. She deserves to say goodbye." Uncle Mike stepped toward us, his face flushed red. "Sarah, you're making a huge mistake. After everything she put this family through, you're going to choose her side?" "I'm not choosing sides," I said, my voice getting stronger with each word. "I'm choosing what's right. I'm choosing what Grandpa would have wanted." My father's face turned purple, and I could see the vein in his forehead that only appeared when he was absolutely furious. "Don't you dare tell me what my father would have wanted. If she goes in that church, we're walking out. I will not sit through this charade." Several relatives who had been watching the drama unfold started shifting uncomfortably. Cousin Jim whispered something to his wife, Jennifer, and they both looked torn between supporting my father and avoiding the scene entirely. My father's sister, Aunt Patricia, shook her head and muttered, "This is not the time or place for this." Uncle Mike doubled down, pointing his finger at me. "Don't choose her over your own father, Sarah. Don't destroy this family over someone who already walked away from us once." Rebecca touched my arm gently. "Sarah, honey, maybe I should just go. I don't want to cause more problems for you." But Tyler, my precious 8-year-old son who had been quietly absorbing this entire adult drama, suddenly spoke up in his clear, innocent voice. "But the sad lady needs to say goodbye to Grandpa Frank, too. That's what goodbye parties are for." His simple logic cut through all the adult complications like a knife. Here was this child who had never met his aunt, who didn't understand the years of resentment and pride, who just saw a sad woman who wanted to say goodbye to someone she loved. I looked down at Tyler, then at Rebecca, then back at my father. "I'm sorry, Dad, but this is wrong. Grandpa Frank would be heartbroken to see his children fighting instead of mourning together." Without waiting for his response, I gently took Rebecca's arm. "Come on," I said. "Let's go inside." As we walked toward the church entrance, I could hear my father behind us. "Sarah, if you walk through those doors with her, there will be consequences. Don't think this won't change things between us." I paused for just a moment, feeling the weight of his threat, but then Tyler squeezed my hand with his tiny fingers, and Rebecca whispered, "Thank you," in a voice so broken and grateful that I knew I was doing the right thing, even if it cost me everything. We walked through those church doors together, Tyler between Rebecca and me, while my father and uncle stood in the parking lot watching their family split apart once again. But this time, I wasn't going to be the coward who stayed silent. Inside the church, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. I had seated Rebecca in the back pew with Tyler between us, and I could feel the weight of every stare, every whispered conversation, every judgmental glance from the other mourners. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together in my lap. Tyler, bless his innocent heart, kept patting Rebecca's hand every time a tear rolled down her cheek. "Don't be sad, lady," he whispered. "Grandpa Frank is in heaven now, and heaven is supposed to be really nice." Rebecca smiled through her tears and whispered back, "You're right, sweetheart." "What's your name?" "I'm Tyler," he said proudly. "I'm 8 years old, and Grandpa Frank was my most favorite person in the whole world. He taught me how to use a hammer and how to make the best chocolate chip pancakes." "He sounds wonderful," Rebecca said, and I could see her realizing that this was her nephew, her brother's grandson, a child she'd never had the chance to know because of our family's stubbornness. The funeral service began, and Pastor Williams delivered a beautiful eulogy about my grandfather's life, his dedication to family, and his legacy of hard work and integrity. Several family members shared memories, and I found myself crying not just for the loss of Grandpa Frank, but for all the years Rebecca had missed, all the family moments she'd been excluded from. Just as Pastor Williams was asking if anyone else would like to share a memory, something completely unexpected happened. Tyler suddenly stood up. Not just sat up straighter, but actually stood up on the pew so he was visible to the entire congregation. "Tyler, sit down," I whispered urgently, trying to pull him back down, but he wiggled away from my grasp with the determination only an 8-year-old can muster. Before I could stop him, He was walking toward the front of the church. Every head turned to watch this small boy in his little black suit making his way down the aisle. The church fell completely silent except for the sound of his dress shoes clicking on the tile floor. Pastor Williams looked surprised, but smiled warmly. "Well, hello there, Tyler. Did you want to share something about your great-grandfather?" Tyler nodded solemnly and reached into his suit jacket pocket. My heart stopped when I saw him pull out a white envelope. Where'd that come from? I'd helped him get dressed that morning, and I didn't remember seeing any envelope. "Grandpa Frank gave me this letter before he went to heaven," Tyler announced in his clear, innocent voice that carried through the silent church. "He said to give it to the lady who would be very sad and sitting in the back." You could have heard a pin drop. Every eye in that church turned toward Rebecca, who had gone completely pale. Her hand flew to her chest, and she looked at Tyler with absolute shock. Tyler walked directly to our pew, and with the serious expression of someone carrying out an important mission, he handed the envelope to Rebecca. "Grandpa Frank said you'd know what to do with it." Rebecca's hands were shaking so badly she could barely open the envelope. She pulled out a handwritten letter, and I could see it was written in my grandfather's distinctive scrawl. She read it silently first, tears streaming down her face, her free hand pressed to her mouth. Tyler looked up at her expectantly. "Grandpa Frank said, if the sad lady came to his goodbye party, I should ask her to read the letter out loud so everyone could hear it. He said it was really important." Rebecca looked around the church at all the faces staring at her, then down at Tyler's earnest expression. With a shaking voice, she stood up and began to read. "My dearest Rebecca," she began, her voice barely above a whisper before growing stronger. "If Tyler is reading you this letter, it means you came to say goodbye, and it means I'm not here to say the words I should have said years ago. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm sorry I let pride and stubbornness keep our family apart. I'm sorry I never picked up the phone when you tried to call. I'm sorry I let your brothers make decisions about who belonged in this family and who didn't." The church was absolutely silent except for Rebecca's voice and the sound of people crying. Even Pastor Williams was wiping his eyes. Rebecca continued reading. "You were always my little girl who asked the biggest questions and dreamed the biggest dreams. I was proud of your independence, even when it scared me. I changed my will months ago to make sure you're taken care of just like everyone else. But more than that, I want you to know that I never stopped loving you, and I never stopped hoping our family would find its way back together. Sometimes it takes the purest heart to deliver the most important messages. Take care of each other. Love, Dad." Not a single person in that church had dry eyes. The silence that followed Rebecca's reading of that letter was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't the uncomfortable silence of tension or anger, but the profound quiet that comes when truth cuts through years of lies we tell ourselves. You could hear people sniffling, the rustle of tissues being pulled from purses, and the soft sound of grown men trying not to sob out loud. Then I heard footsteps, heavy, deliberate footsteps walking down the church aisle. I looked up to see my father, his face streaked with tears, walking toward us with Uncle Mike right behind him. For a terrifying moment, I thought he was coming to drag Rebecca out of the church to finish what he'd started in the parking lot. Instead, my father stopped at our pew, looked down at Rebecca with eyes full of regret, and said the two words I never thought I'd hear him say, "I'm sorry." Rebecca stood up slowly, still clutching Grandpa Frank's letter in her trembling hands. "Robert, No," my father interrupted, his voice thick with emotion. "Let me say this. I'm sorry, sis. I'm sorry I kept Dad from you. I'm sorry I answered his phone and hung up when you called. I'm sorry I let my pride hurt all of us for 12 years. Uncle Mike stepped forward, and for the first time in my life, I saw him disagree with my father. "I'm sorry too, Rebecca. We were wrong. We were so damn wrong." Rebecca couldn't speak. She just opened her arms, and my father stepped into them. 12 years of stubbornness, 12 years of silence, 12 years of family holidays with an empty chair, all dissolved in that moment. Uncle Mike joined them, and suddenly the three siblings were embracing in front of the entire congregation, crying like children. Tyler tugged on my dress and whispered loudly enough for half the church to hear, "Mommy, I think the sad lady isn't sad anymore." Through my own tears, I laughed. "No, baby. I don't think she's sad anymore either." The rest of the funeral was completely different from what anyone expected. Instead of a somber, divided ceremony, it became a celebration of not just Grandpa Frank's life, but of family healing. People who had been choosing sides in the parking lot were now crying tears of joy. Cousin Jim and his wife Jennifer came over to reintroduce themselves to Rebecca. Aunt Patricia, who had disapproved of the drama earlier, spent 20 minutes catching Rebecca up on family news she'd missed. After the service, as we stood in the fellowship hall sharing stories and eating casseroles that church ladies always seem to materialize during times of grief, Tyler became the star of the show. Everyone wanted to know how he'd ended up with that letter, how long he'd been carrying it, whether he understood what it meant. Tyler, with the simple honesty that only children possess, explained that Grandpa Frank had given him the letter during one of their last visits to the hospital. He said someday a very sad lady might come to his goodbye party, and if she did, I should give her the letter and ask her to read it to everyone. He said it was the most important job anyone could ever give me. Rebecca knelt down to Tyler's level and took his small hands in hers. "Thank you for doing such an important job, Tyler." "Your great-grandfather would be so proud of you." Tyler beamed with pride, then asked the question that made everyone laugh through their tears. "Does this mean you're my aunt now? Because I always wanted an aunt, and Mommy said I had one, but I never got to meet her." "Yes, sweetheart," Rebecca said, hugging him tight. "I'm your Aunt Rebecca, and I can't wait to get to know you better." Looking back now, 3 years later, I can honestly say that Tyler's innocent act of delivering that letter changed our entire family forever. Rebecca moved back to town 6 months after the funeral. She and Tyler have become thick as thieves, just like she and I used to be when I was his age. She takes him to movies, teaches him to paint, and spoils him with the kind of aunt love I remember so well from my own childhood. My father and Rebecca talk every week now. Uncle Mike includes her in all family gatherings. We celebrate holidays together again, with no empty chairs and no unspoken tensions. But the most important lesson came from Tyler himself. Sometimes the people who love us most know exactly what we need to hear, even after they're gone. And sometimes it takes the purest heart in the room, my 8-year-old son, to make sure that message gets delivered exactly when it's needed most. Children see the world without the complicated filters that adults use. They see sadness and want to fix it. They see family and don't understand why love should have conditions. Tyler didn't deliver that letter because he understood family politics or forgiveness or the complexities of adult relationships. He delivered it because his great-grandfather asked him to, and because a sad lady needed to not be sad anymore. That's the kind of simple wisdom that changes everything. Thank you so much for watching this story about how one little boy's pure heart helped heal our broken family. Tyler taught me that sometimes the most powerful moments come from the simplest acts of love, and that children often see solutions that adults are too proud or stubborn to recognize. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of your own family experiences, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Have you ever witnessed a moment where a child's innocence changed everything? Or maybe you have your own story about family forgiveness and second chances. Your stories inspire me to keep sharing these real-life moments that remind us what truly matters. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need to hear this message about the power of forgiveness and family healing. Sometimes we all need a reminder that it's never too late to make things right with the people we love. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, stories about real families, real struggles, and the moments that change everything, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new video. I share a new story every week about the beautiful, messy, complicated, and ultimately hopeful nature of family life. Until next time, remember what Tyler taught us. Love doesn't have to be complicated, and sometimes the smallest gestures create the biggest miracles. Take care, and I'll see you in the next story.